Welcome to Carefree and Conscious, paranormal and profound authors with stunning true stories. If you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe. I'm your host, Susanne Wilson, the Carefree Medium and Intuition Educator. Today on Carefree and Conscious, Medical Intuition and Healing Demystified with Julie Ryan. We'll be talking about Pope Francis. This was recorded on the day that he transitioned to spirit, and another pope who, from the spirit world, highly influenced Julie Ryan's life trajectory. Find out about her books, especially her Angelic Attendance book and trainings. She explains that everyone has abilities and can tap into their intuition, and shares experiences as a medical intuitive and how she uses stem cell energy to heal various body parts. If you've heard me talk before about our guides and angels and interdimensional beings giving us molecular upgrades, you'll want to pay attention to this episode. She believes that the energy on the planet is shifting to a higher vibration and that each generation is more advanced than the next. And now, Carefree and Conscious, Medical Intuition and Healing Demystified. Julie Ryan, welcome to Carefree and Conscious.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. What a treat and a delight to be with you.
It's been a long time coming because of both of our schedules. So I'm glad that you hang in there and let things work out when they do work out. But guess what? Today we're doing this on April 21st, 2025, and there was a very significant passing today of Pope Francis. And so I was just wondering, is there any observation or anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, the thing that occurred to me the most out of that was our American Vice President, J.D. Vance, met with him yesterday.
Mhm.
And so I thought that was remarkable because, as we know, oftentimes people will wait until somebody shows up. And certainly it was Easter yesterday, so I think he was waiting until Easter. But I think there's a big significance that he met with America's vice president yesterday, less than 24 hours before he passed. And and of course, I see and teach that there are angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets that are with us, and university-based research validates that. And so I thought of JD and his family being in the room with the Pope, with all those angels and saints and, all those spirits that were there as part of his Welcome to Heaven committee that we all have. So those were the two thoughts that I had.
I was also thinking the same, and along those lines, it's like we know that the Pope was very close to death for several months. And I woke up one morning a couple months ago. I thought, he's died, he's died. And I'm grabbing my phone early in the morning. I'm not a practicing Catholic. I just happened to really groove on this particular Pope because of his message of compassion. And I'd also read that he had been a bouncer in a club in his pre-seminary life in Argentina. And I thought, man, this guy's really down to earth. So I like him. And when I looked at my phone, oh no, the Pope's not died. And it happened one more time a couple weeks ago. And I think he probably had some very close to death or near death experiences. And like you said, he hung on for Easter. He got to have a meeting with the US leader. Do you hear that a lot from the other side, that maybe they negotiate? I want to stay a little longer. I've got an exit point, but I'm going to hang in till this happens or that happens. Do you have experiences with that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And what I've heard from Spirit a bazillion times is we all decide when we go, where we go, how we go, who's with us or not when we go, and what the circumstances are that surround our passing. So he was totally in control, as we all are in every situation. And one other interesting point about Pope Francis is in 2016, he issued what's called a papal bull. It's kind of like a bulletin to the pastors throughout the world from the Vatican. And the papal bull said that he wanted his pastors to welcome psychics and healers because they were doing the work of the Holy Spirit. And my book, Angelic Attendance, is given away throughout many, many churches, many Catholic churches, many churches and synagogues of all, churches of all denominations, synagogues as well. And I know my Catholic parish where we go, I was there yesterday for Easter, my husband and I, front row. And they give a copy of my book to everybody that comes in to plan a funeral. And so many people think, oh, I'm not supposed to talk to psychics and healers. And that's like, this is coming from the head shed. This is coming from the Vatican saying, no, welcome these people because they're doing the work of the Holy Spirit. So I give him a lot of credit for that, for changing the conversation. I don't know that it's in the zeitgeist yet, but certainly it's percolating and people are starting to pay attention.
He certainly had a very strong hand in helping with the ascension of our thoughts and the shift on the earth. And you talk about that a lot. But first, let's back up just a second. You mentioned Angelic Attendance, and you were kind enough to send me a copy of the book. But I understand that I can buy the book, but I can also go to your website and get this for free.
For free. I feel like a game show hostess when I hold it up. Yeah, just go to julieryangift.com and we'll send you a free digital and audio book version. You're welcome to buy the paperback, but I've given away so many thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of this information in the form of audio book and digital because I think it should be taught in the schools. And it's available both in English and in Spanish because everybody's so afraid of death. And there's nothing to be afraid of. We're surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. And university based research validates that 90% of people, Susanne, at the end of their lives see the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets as they're transitioning. 90%. So when we think, oh, grandma's hallucinating because she's seeing her mother who's been dead for 75 years, grandma's not hallucinating. Grandma can really see her mother's spirit who's in the room there with her.
Well, let's talk about gifts of the Spirit, which are mentioned in the Christian Bible. What are your gifts of the Spirit?
Well, I guess, can you elaborate on the question? You mean, how do I connect with spirit or?
Yeah, do you like to label yours as medical intuitive, clairvoyant, clairaudient, or do you look at them as how they unfold? I mean, how do you describe what you do?
I'm an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world and a businesswoman who learned how to do woo woo. And I'm a buffet of psychicness. That's how I describe it. Because
I'm loving this
once
so
you connect with spirit, you can do it all. I don't understand why it's siloed. You got the pet psychics and the medical people and the mediums it's
yes.
like you connect with spirit, you can do it all, and that's what I teach. So I'm a buffet of psychicness. And I learned how to do all this stuff. I didn't have dead people chasing me as a kid, let alone, if I did, what I would have done with that. No, I learned how to do all this stuff starting in my mid 30s.
So somebody listening to this going, I am so left brain. I'm so analytical. I'm such an engineer. Aren't you an engineer?
No, I have a communications degree, but I've founded 9 companies in 5 industries. And I hired a bunch of engineers because I manufactured surgical devices. And I have patents and trademarks that I did. And then I hired somebody to draw it up.
But
So, yeah.
devil's advocate here, that is so opposite of the so-called woo. How do you reconcile this? Or how did you reconcile this unfoldment for yourself?
Well, I have a girlfriend who gave me a book called Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mays about 30 years ago. And she called herself a medical intuitive. And I thought, well, what the heck is that? And at that point, I was already inventing and manufacturing surgical devices, and I'd been in the hospital supply industry for years. So I was very interested in the healing process, more from the supply side of the equation. So it piqued my interest, and I I went to the bookstore, Suzanne, because we didn't have the internet yet, and I went to a Barnes and Noble to see what else was there because I thought they'd probably have more stuff along this line than maybe even my local library. And I found Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan, who's a former NASA physicist who parlays very complex quantum physics information into understandable English for the non scientific mind. That would be me. And I read her book and I thought, oh, this is interesting. I want to know more. So I called her school and I said, you guys got anybody teaching this stuff where I live? And sure enough, they did. They had a graduate who had just opened a school. So I studied with her for 6 years. And the funniest thing about this, Susanne, is my family and my friends were saying, why are you doing this? I said, I don't know. And they said, well, what are you going to do with it? I said, again, I have no clue. And so here I am all those years later and being my buffet of psychicness.
When you're not teaching and you're not running one of these businesses, which I can only imagine what your schedule is like, how do you connect in your own quiet time for Julie Ryan?
I pray. I pray and I do a kind of a combination of prayer and meditation every morning for about 15 minutes, and then I do it when I get in bed at night. It involves gratitude and the rosary, good Catholic girl, 12 years of Catholic schools. And the thing about the rosary is so interesting because it's ancient and it's a form of meditation and it's tactile because of the beads. It helps people focus and it's just another form of meditation. So I do that every morning and every night.
It's working.
Well, I get some what I call divine downloads when I'm waking up in the morning, even before I say my prayers, and I wake up with guidance from spirit. And I've been given whole business plans that way before, where I'll wake up and I'll start dictating into my phone, before I lose the thought on things. But I do this woo-woo stuff full time now. I've sold my companies. I have one that's operating kind of on its own, but everything else has been sold. So I can devote my time and effort and energy to helping people on their
That's what
life's journey,
everybody
like you.
wants. Yeah, we everybody wants to create a company, build it up, and then when it starts to either get tedious or something else wants more of your attention, then you sell it and you put your energy into the new thing.
Yeah.
Is this the new thing for you, or were the downloads something you're getting all of your life and maybe you didn't know what it was?
No, I was prompted by a dead pope. May I share that story?
I think it's extremely appropriate today, especially.
That's right. I When I was with my mentor, and she's still my mentor, I talk to her once a month. She's in her mid 80s. And over the years, when she was doing a healing on me, I'd lay on a massage table, and on both sides of me, all my deceased loved ones were there. My parents, my grandparents, my late dog Katie, who puts her little paws on the table and stands on her hind legs, and she's participating. And they all participate in the healing. And one day, this spirit of a pope showed up, had his hat on and his staff, his shepherd's rod, and the whole 9 yards, vestments. And I said to him, well, who are you? And he said, I'm Clement. And I said, oh, I've never heard of a Pope Clement. He said, well, I was number 6. He was kind of laughing. And I said, great. How may I help you? I'm thinking, why are you here? And he said, you're supposed to teach the world what happens when somebody dies. Because you know what happens. And I can tell you that backstory in a minute. And I said, yeah, I'm a businesswoman. I'm not doing that. People think I'm nuts. And he laughed and he said, yeah, yeah, yeah. Everything you've done in your life has prepared you for this. Just get on with it. And I said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Thanks for stopping by. Have a nice day. So and my mentor, Susan, could see him, Suzanne. So I get in the car to go home. And just for kicks, I did an internet search on my phone on Pope Clement the Sixth. Well, come to find out, this guy was in office during the Black Plague when two-thirds of Europe died. And he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. And I thought, God, Ryan, you can't make that up. And so he said, yeah, do that. And so then fast forward 2 or 3 years, yeah, just went on with my whatever I was doing. And one day at church on Sunday, I was sitting between my husband and my son, and from the pulpit, the priest said, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody could tell us if the angels really greet us and lead us into paradise, the angels and our deceased loved ones? Because there's a prayer at the end of every Catholic funeral called In Paradisum, which talks about the angels and your loved ones will greet you and lead you into paradise. So Father John Fallon, Irish from the Emerald Isles, saying this from the pulpit, and I'm getting elbowed by my husband and my son. And I'm thinking, God, really? From the pulpit, you're giving me grief about this? And that's when I finally decided, okay. I'll do something with this. And so all the Ask Julie Ryan stuff has resulted from that.
How did stem cells enter into your practice of medical intuition and energy healing?
Stem cells are really an interesting phenomenon. First of all, I think it's important to remember that the body has the capacity to totally heal anything and everything. And sometimes death is the healing. But when people get a diagnosis of, oh, you're just going to have this for the rest of your life and you need to stay on these medications. No, the body has a capacity to heal everything. Western medicine, Eastern medicine is part of the healing equation. The energetic part is another part of the healing equation. And the other thing that's important to remember too, Susanne, is nobody heals anybody else. We all heal ourselves. No doctor, no shaman, no medical provider, no healer like you or like me is going to heal anybody else. It's spirit working through us and with us to help the person heal themselves. So the healing happens on the energetic level and then it integrates into their body based on what their spirit wants to explore and experience. So, having said all that, stem cell energy will regenerate any body part we need. And I spent a lot of time in surgery over the decades because I was inventing products and testing prototypes with my team and things like that. And so it used to be when somebody, let's say, needed a new kidney, I watch a healing in my mind's eye. I'm like a human MRI. I can see inside people's bodies with their permission. I don't walk around scanning people because I think that's unethical. But I would watch a healing happen where I'd see the donor patient in the operating room. I'd see the patient who was going to get the new kidney. I'd watch the diseased kidney get removed. I'd watch the donor kidney get put into the person who needed a new kidney and all of that. Probably 7 or 8 years ago, as the stem cell concept was becoming more talked about in our regular news and information that was coming out, I started to see stem cell energy used for healings. And so now I haven't seen a transplant surgery like what I just described in probably 7 or 8 years. But what I see now is I'll see a mold, like a plastics mold. I use those to manufacture surgical devices, blow molds, injection molds. I'll see a mold, let's say of a left kidney, and stem cell energy, which looks like a light amber colored gel, has sparkles in it because it's woo woo, gotta have sparkles. And it reminds me of Dippity Doo hair gel from the 60s and 70s when we were kids. And that's another fun story. So that comes in. I always see a vortex spinning above that mold. And then I watch a new kidney get generated energetically. I watch the diseased kidney get removed. I see the plumbing clamped above and below. I watch that diseased kidney get removed. I watch the new kidney get put in. I watch it get stitched up into place. I watch the clamps get opened and they're tested to make sure that, all the vascular and everything is in there, all the plumbing that needs to be in there for the coming in and going out of the kidney. And sometimes it shows up on subsequent scans. And it freaks out the doctors. It's a riot when that happens because they're saying, excuse me, you have this kidney that's like, looks like it's brand new and looks like it belongs to somebody that's way younger than you. And we just did this x-ray a couple of months ago and this kidney wasn't functioning. So, funny thing about the stem cell energy, may I share a fun story on that?
I wish you would.
First time that came in, and that was years ago when I was thinking, "Oh my God, people just are going to think I'm nuts with these analogies that spirit shows me." Well, I know now that it gives us a human frame of reference for the healing that's happening. And if we can envision what I'm describing, it helps integrate the healing into the body, helps person integrate it into their body. So, first time stem cell energy, I saw it. It came in, it was light amber colored gel, kind of watery, had sparkles in it. That was all good. And then I heard, it's like dippity doo. I heard that in my head from spirit. I said, you want me to say that? And I heard, yeah. And I said, why? And they said, because people your age are going to know what it is. Everybody else can look it up, and it's funny. And I said, what's funny have to do with it? And they said, it's supposed to be fun. Fun is joy. Joy is a high vibration. When it's fun, that's going to keep you and keep the other person with whom you're working in a high vibration, and it's going to help them integrate the healing. So I had to get over myself and said, quit being such a drama queen and just report what I get from spirit, which is what I do.
Well, I have to tell you, it's been a couple of years ago. I was doing some research on a phenomenon I was encountering, and that's how I first heard of you. It wasn't from a conference where we both spoke or a mutual colleague or anything like that. I was researching this phenomenon I was finding about spirit guides showing me that they were doing what they called molecular upgrades
Mhm.
on human beings here on Earth to change their body because the person was emanating a higher frequency through the thoughts, words, and actions being positive, through taking action to take care of Gaia, the earth, to help others. And they were achieving what everybody wants to achieve, which is this higher frequency where nothing can ever really knock you down for very long. No illness, no injury, no disappointment. But our physical body has to change to hold more light, if you will. And
Mhm.
I'm saying that metaphorically, but it's also, actually technically on point right there too. And so I started doing all these searches and I was looking through the academic papers for those non materialist scientists talking about holding more light. And I came across an interview of you talking about the dippity doo and the sparkles, because every time I would see that coming through in a session where the guides were talking about changing someone's molecular structure, it sparkled
Yeah.
like that. And so I thought, I think that's what this woman is talking about. It's a healing, it's a changing of the physical body
Yeah.
to be able to function in a higher frequency. And isn't that what healing is?
Exactly. And to build on that point, I watch DNA healings all the time, multiple times a week, where
Oh,
I watch, and again, fun analogies coming into my head. DNA looks like a strip of paper that you'd see inside a fortune cookie with the fortune written on it. And DNA always comes out of an X chromosome. I see an X. I watch these strips of paper come out in my mind's eye. And of course, everybody's got an X, right? Boys have an X and a Y, and girls have two X's. So I'm like, okay. And I had to go back and review some of this stuff from my sixth grade science lessons. I felt like I got an update on that because I didn't remember that stuff. But the other thing that's so interesting, Suzanne, is DNA is comprised of four nucleic acids represented by four letters A, T, C, and G. One strand can have 100,000 letters on it, can have up to 1 billion letters. I watch those letters get resequenced as if, imagine playing Scrabble in warp speed, where you're moving a letter up and over to form a word. And I watch it happen in warp speed, and then I watch that strand of DNA, once it's been resequenced, snap back into the X chromosome. And for somebody, for example, that has cancer, I most of the time will see at least 7 strands come out of an X chromosome. I watch them all get resequenced, watch them all snap back in. And then as I work with the person as they're going through their treatment, we can stay 3 steps ahead of the cancer because the cancer likes to mutate to stay viable. And so we stay 3 steps ahead of it because we're resequencing the DNA and the cells are going back to working normally and performing normally. So it's really fascinating the things that I get to see in my mind's eye. And I promise I've never used drugs in my whole life, ever. And I don't drink alcohol.
Yeah, because that's
So
what everybody's thinking right now, that you're
I
hallucinating,
know.
you need medications or
Oh,
no, it never before has humanity been so open-minded, largely open-minded to something new like the plant medicines. But the thing is, we have this even without chemicals that we can quantify in our 3D world, and that's what you're sharing. But you somehow, I don't know if you're feeling like this was the mission before you were born that you came in to do, but it's like, you're not going to like that I say this, but you're anointed. You're anointed for this work, and I'm not trying to place you above others in any way, shape, or form. One of the things that you and I don't want is people have this tendency to either to look at people who have sort of above the norm abilities as they deify us, put us up on a pedestal, or they demonize us. Like, oh my God, are you making a contract with the devil to get this healing? Or are you speaking to tricky spirits or whatever? We don't want that. But it's just like a musician is born with some kind of abilities, and hopefully they find them in this life, and they work with this. What do you think that you planned this to come in as a medical intuitive, an energy healer, and it goes so deep with this? And do you feel like there's something bigger and more developing, or is this it?
yes, I do. Before I answer that question, because it's 2 parts, I'd
Yeah.
like to address the, oh, you're dealing, you're dancing with the devil,
Yeah,
that
go
kind of
ahead.
stuff.
Go
Yeah,
ahead. And I'm big on the two-part questions because it's like I get so excited. I cannot hold back. And this is exciting. I hope that people, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can probably see the light around us or sense something. If you're listening to it, I hope that you're feeling it through our voices, because where two or more are gathered, there are
exactly.
miracles. But
Exactly.
this is really important because we all need to allow ourselves to heal. And so, yeah, let's address that elephant in the room about
Yeah,
how we're making a deal with the devil if we take this healing.
right. The thing that I've heard from spirit a bazillion times is all spirits are pure love. That whole evil spirit thing was concocted by civilizations and religions and governments to control the masses with fear. We saw that with the pandemic. People did stupid stuff during the pandemic because they were so afraid and their government was telling them to do it. Not just here in America, but elsewhere. Because I work with people all over the world like you do. But I live in the deep South. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. And I people it doesn't happen very often, but a couple of times I had people say, "Well, I think you're talking to the devil." And I'd say, "Oh, why do you think that?" And they'd say, "Because you're talking with spirits. And it says in the Bible you're not supposed to talk with spirits." I said, "Yeah, no, I'm not so sure about that." But I'll say to them, "Well, do you pray?" And they'll say, "Of course I pray." I'll say, "Great. To whom are you praying?" Jesus, God, Buddha, whomever. I'll say, "Great. So does your prayer ever get answered? Do your prayers get answered?" And they say, "Yeah, all the time." I said, "Well, how does it answer?" "Well, I'll have a thought and I feel like I'm being guided and I'm being led." And I'll say, okay, so let me get this right. Are you sitting on the couch in your living room and you're talking to Jesus and Jesus is sitting there next to you on the couch? And they'll say, well, no. And I'll say, oh, you're talking with Jesus's spirit. And you can just see the wheels going off in their heads and the fireworks, and they're going, I never thought of it that way. I said, we all talk to spirit all day long. That's
Yeah.
where we get guidance.
Yeah.
So prayer is the same thing that what I do. I have the Holy Spirit working through me and with me to help facilitate healing. Oh, it's really interesting how they're enlightened instantly when they think of it that way. And it's just a different spin on what they've been taught that doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah,
That's
that's
number
good. That's good because that's just follow the logic there, folks. Follow the
right.
logic.
Right. So to your question of do I think that I've been led to do this? Absolutely. I've been led. I believe I was led to do the medical supply business, the hospital supply business for 30 years, because oftentimes the healings that I see in my mind's eye and describe to the person with whom I'm working or somebody who's called into my show, it emulates what I saw in the operating room. So I know what they're doing. Like arthritis in the joints looks like that battery corrosion, that white crunchy stuff on a battery that's expired, like in a flashlight.
Oh
Have you ever
my
done that?
gosh.
That's what it looks
Yeah.
like, that white crunchy calcium stuff. And I've been in a whole bunch of surgeries where a joint is being scoped and
Yeah.
the surgeon will be cleaning out the arthritis. Well, that's what it looks like, that white crunchy
Oh,
stuff
the
on an expired,
gooey, speckly. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
crunchy. And so, of
Okay.
course, that's my frame of reference because that's what it actually looks
You
like on
got
the
the
monitor.
dictionary. You got the database. You got the
I
dictionary
got
and
the
the database.
database for a
Yeah.
lot of it, but I see new healings come in all the time
Okay.
where my clients may hear me say, "Oh, this is cool. I haven't seen this before." And then it's like it's in my bag of tricks because somebody else will come along and then I'll use that same healing with them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
keep reaching higher and higher levels. Back to your question about have I been led to do this? Yes. On my show last summer, I had a guy named Simon Bown who
I
came,
know Simon.
you know, Simon,
Yeah,
he's
he has a
fabulous.
he's a voracious appetite for learning and exploring. He's really
He's
cool.
a Brit, and
Yeah.
I'd never been hypnotized before, ever.
Okay.
And I thought, well, that would be fun. I'll have him on the show and he can hypnotize me and
Yep.
we'll record it. So he did. And Suzanne, I went back to this star, not a planet, a star, 500 billion light years away. And that's where the energy was infused in my body in that lifetime, where it was like, like an atom drawing where you've got the elliptical energy circles going around and flashes of light and all this other stuff. It was wild. It was wild. And so I've also been told by several people that God, the spirits, the whole kit and caboodle has said, yeah, you're helping change the way people see healing.
That's
And I
big.
have
Really big.
many, many colleagues and friends who are in the medical business because I was in it for 30 years. And I'll talk to, like when my husband, here's a great example. My husband had two new knees put in 2 months apart from each other.
Oh gosh.
And I gave the surgeon, who I thought was great, and I'm an inventor of orthopedic surgery devices, so I knew a little bit about it, and I wanted to know whose implant he was using and why did he choose it and stuff like that. You'll appreciate that coming from academia. So I gave him a copy of my book. I said, I'm going to be able to see what's going on in the OR when you're working on him. And I just want you to know I'm going to be in there and go do your thing. We have all the confidence in the world in you. So the second knee, he's in recovery. Tim's in recovery. I'm talking to the doctor post-op and I said to him, God, you had to jerry rig that some. That implant was hard for you to get in. What was going on? He said, Oh my God, you really could see what was happening in the operating room, couldn't you? And I said, Yeah, I told you. And then he said, after both knees, he said, "Can you come home with all my patients? Because your husband has recovered in record time and recovered perfectly. And can I just send you home with all my patients?" I said, "Well, no, but they can call me. They can call into my
Yeah.
show."
So
Yeah.
he went from probably thinking, this woman's a pain in my blank, and to
Yeah.
what? She
Yeah.
really knows, and she really was like there.
Well, not only that, but oftentimes we'll go in. Our grandson, when he was 4, Sam, he fell off of a swing set, and his mother called and she said, "Sam's holding his arm. Can you scan it?" And I said, "Yeah, it's broken. It's above the elbow. It's his right arm." I told him exactly where it was. I said, "I'll meet you at Children's Hospital." So I did, met her at the emergency room. The doctor came in the room. And so she's telling him where the break is and stuff. And he's looking at her like, "Yeah, right, lady." Well, he came back and he said, "Yeah, you were right. That's where the x-ray shows,
Mm-hmm.
the break is."
Mm-hmm.
So it comes in really handy. And the other important thing about all of this is with you and with me, we're rarely with the person when we're talking with them.
Yeah.
I always say I could scan you in a galaxy far, far away. I've scanned so many people flying across the ocean at 40,000 feet. It doesn't matter because energy is energy and we just connect into them.
Well,
It's really
I
fun.
really I want to know if you feel like there's something new coming to you, something deeper coming to you. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a lot, but we evolve. And it's like more keeps getting given to you. Do you feel like there's something else coming, or do you get new guides added to your team from time to time, or new angels? Or I mean, look at how the world is changing with artificial intelligence
Mhm.
too. How do you think all of this stuff could impact what you do?
I think it enhances it. I think it makes it better, makes it easier. You go to ChatGPT and you put in whatever you want to know, and it instantly spits out whatever information you want to know. And it gives you all the references, all the footnotes of where the information was coming from. And I think we need to be able to discern what feels right and what doesn't and get over our own fear of being wrong. But when we're tuned into spirit, we know if it resonates or not. Everybody knows that. You don't have to learn that. We all come in with that ability. And I've written 4 children's books because we're all born with the ability, and through the years I've had so many mothers and grandmothers in particular say, "How does little Johnny know all this information about my husband who's been dead for 20 years, his grandfather?" And little Johnny says that grandpa comes to play trains with him at night when he's sleeping, and he knows information that there's no way this 3-year-old could know. And how does my little granddaughter know about a past life, and she knows details that we can corroborate with historic documentation online, and this kid can't read yet? And then my favorite is when we tell our little 5-year-old grandson or son that grandma's in heaven now, and he says, "No, she's not. She's asleep in that box in the front of the room," because they're at the funeral home for the visitation hours. So little children all come in, we all come in with the ability, and then we shut it down. It's been my experience about the age of 6 or 7. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because grown-ups have said, "Oh, honey, that's just your imagination. That's not really real." Or a friend will say, "There ain't anybody there. Who are you talking to? What's wrong with you?" And they shut it down that way too. So I find that when we can encourage children and say, even if we don't see or perceive what they are, just ask them questions. Really, tell me more about it. What are you seeing? It ends up being such a wonderful enhancement to their life so they can get guidance. And it's a wonderful problem solving skill for them as well.
Yeah, I talked just real recently to a television producer who produced, I won't name the show, but it dealt with children remembering their previous lives, and then they'd go and investigate it. And I asked this producer, what did you think you were going to find when you started this show? And he said, confabulation. Confabulation. I didn't go in trying to make a show that would prove anything. And there would be elements of, maybe picking up on something psychically and thinking it was that child. But now I'm completely convinced these children had these lives. He didn't have one interview that he wasn't convinced was real. And as far as the age of 6 or 7, I think, Julie, it's probably because the root chakra gets fully formed around age 7, just about. And so we get so grounded with the earth, and we're getting indoctrinated, and it's like the benevolent lie of this is all there is what you can see, the materialist world. I'm just glad that that's changing. And I feel like the young people, the under 20s that we have right now, are coming in like a little more pre-wired to
Oh,
accept, right?
absolutely.
That there's no death, only the body will ever die. And they're not looking for how do I connect with my grandparents on the other side. They're like, oh, I talked to them already. I want to know how to make the world a better place or get more out of this life right now. And that's where things like your angelic attendant program, I think, just comes right in and fills that niche. And I wonder if you could talk about that a little more, like just tell us, what is an angelic attendant?
Well, angelic attendant training, my training, I, I it came from my book, and I originally was going to call Angelic Attendance my book Angelic Escorts. And my son Jonathan said, "Mom, if you do that every call girl website, when somebody does an internet search, every call girl website's going to come up." And I said, "Oh goodness, you're probably right." So that's why I changed it to Angelic Attendance.
Okay.
Okay, so
Like it.
there's that. So
Okay.
again, Pope Clement the Sixth, I brought him in, and I had a gal who was a client, who is a client in South Africa, and her mother-in-law got sick, was in a coma, and couldn't communicate. And this was totally unexpected. So I had this call, and there were, I think, 6 of their family members, including her, on the call. And we're talking to grandma, because you know this, we can communicate with spirit whether you're attached to a body or not. That's irrelevant. It's our spirit connecting with their spirit. So we're talking to grandma. We're finding out, what are her wishes? Does she want to stay on the ventilator? Does she have a will? If she does, where is it? She gave us the cross streets of the bank, what the drop box, or whatever, what do they call it, lockbox, what the lockbox number was, the whole 9 yards. So at the end of the call, my client said, "Can you teach me how to do this stuff?" And I said, "Eh, probably. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it." So I got Pope Clement on the line. I said, "Am I supposed to teach a class?" He goes, "Yeah, like, duh." And I said, "I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it, blah, blah, blah." He told me, "You do this, you do that, you do this other thing. Here's the price. You started on this date, all this other stuff." And I said, "Nobody's going to pay that." I said, "Are you confused on the number?" Here I'm arguing with this dead Pope, right, who has universal intelligence. And he said, "No, just do it." Treats me like a Nike ad at that point. He's like, "Just do it." So he wanted me to start at 10 days from the time I was having this conversation with him and his spirit. And I said, "I can't get it done that fast. I don't have a curriculum. What's curriculum, I guess, is singular, right? I don't have a curriculum put together. I got to see if my webmaster can put a page up. I got to I got to market it, all this other stuff." He's like, "Just do it." So everything fell into line. I talked about it on my show on Thursday night. We had the web page up on Sunday night that got active. By Tuesday, I had 11 people from 4 countries sign up and pay this big fee that I realized is the root number of it is 7, which is spiritual perfection in the Bible. And now we're doing the 23rd class. And hundreds of people have gone through it from 14 countries around the world. They learn the buffet of psychicness in a weekend. It's super easy. I'm not sure why this stuff has gotten so complicated by people over the years. I mean, it's easy. And so it's fun, and everybody has the ability to do it. So we teach communicating with spirit, the 12 phases of transition, what happens when somebody's dying, how the angels and the loved ones are around you, past life stuff, medical stuff, pet stuff. I mean, the whole 9 yards, all the buffet of psychicness in a weekend. And it's a blast. Suzanne. It's a blast. And the key with it is, and I'm sure you found this too, is we have 9 practice groups a week that are free for life. I implemented that without consulting with Clement, but he thought it was a good idea. And so we have 9 practice groups a week that's all graduate led. And that's when the skills really develop, because when we get validation for the information we receive, makes us trust it. The more we trust it, the easier it comes in, the easier it comes in. It's just second nature.
Trust is absolutely the main ingredient to continue to develop your abilities. And when I hear people saying, I get things for other people and I trust that, but when I get it for me, I don't trust it for me. And my feedback is you have to practice, first off, acting upon it and assessing your results. You have to write it down, keep a journal of how an insight came to you and what did you do about it? What was the outcome? I mean, the proof is in the eating of the pudding, but it's also kind of a cop out to say I can do things for other people and not for me. But then I also get reminded from time to time, I can't always do for me either. It's easier to do for other people. My guides have said, just remember that sometimes the lesson has to unfold. You can't get all of the information up front every single time. You're going to trip and fall sometimes, you're going to triumph others, but they remind me the peace that surpasses, the peace that surpasses all understanding, no matter the outcome of whatever it is always available to you if you make inner peace your priority. So yes, for you and I don't know if you have this too. I think a lot of people, it feels like it's easier to read for somebody else than it is for yourself. But when that happens, that's telling you something. That's telling you there's something unfolding. Look for the synchronicities that are pointing, the signposts that are sort of pointing the way. That's different. When I hear I can't trust because I can't read for myself, I'm like, yeah, but don't even think of it as like a formal read for yourself. Just think of it as when I wake up in the morning, thank you for this day. I'm happy to be here. Where was I last night? What insights did I gain last night from astral travel or dream? What do I need to know for today? And open up. I think we're really hard on ourselves. Do you find that with students that they sort of grade themselves really, really rough on how they do with their intuition?
Well, yeah, and our thoughts create our reality.
Yeah,
So if you're saying, "Oh, I can't do this," you're right, you can't,
can't.
because you're in fear, and fear is a low vibration, and spirit doesn't communicate on the I feel crappy channels because the vibration's too low. So you got to raise your vibrational level. I have an interesting story that happened yesterday to your point earlier about things unfolding. And I
Yeah.
always tell people when they say, "Well, if we're communicating with spirit or they're asking for guidance," I'll say, this is what we're getting at this moment in time, but future events are fluid. And there are a bazillion variables that come in to help decide what an outcome's going to be. So I can give you what it is at this moment in time, but it may be different next week, next month, next year. So yesterday we were celebrating Easter with dear family friends, and one of the sons is a professor, and he got his doctorate 10 years ago, and he got a job in California at a small university, and they live here in Birmingham. And he said, when he told me about the job 10 years ago, I said, "You're going to go to California. You're going to have a great time. You're going to really enjoy it and learn a lot. And I really see you at Georgia Tech. I said, you're going to end up at Georgia Tech. You're going to be a professor at Georgia Tech. I have goosebumps telling you this. And and so I completely forgot that we'd had that conversation. And the first thing he said to me when he saw me yesterday was, and I knew that he'd been hired at Georgia Tech last week. He said, when I got the offer letter, you're the first person I thought of because you said, we're going to go to California, going to enjoy it, but I'm going to be um, working at Georgia Tech. And he said, wow, how'd you do that? I said, that was just the guidance I was getting from Spirit. And the other thing, and I'd be interested to hear if you experience the same thing. I don't remember what Spirit says. I'm not in a different reality. I'm talking to Spirit, but I'm gonna remember the person. And if
Yeah,
like he did yesterday, he told me about that conversation, I can get it back, but I don't need to store all of that in my brain. It's almost like it's in the cloud, literally, that I
yeah,
can go back and I can access it because, like you, I talk to thousands of people a year as
yeah.
clients and students, and I'm going to remember them, but I'm not going to remember what we discussed.
It just comes through. It's based on the current trajectory. If thoughts, words, and actions are changed, or if 10 people are taking action around a situation and their thoughts, words, and actions are changed, trajectories change for sure. And that's why what we do is so important. We teach people how to do this for themselves.
Right.
So otherwise, you could literally need in your mind, you could think you need a reading every week, and that's not really true. We want to empower, not make people dependent.
Exactly. Well,
And
exactly. And there's only so much bandwidth that we have. I mean,
you,
that's a thing. But when you were on my show, you said something really profound. And we were taught many things that were very profound, but this one sticks out in my head. And that is, you said, when somebody comes to me and they're grieving, I will do an appointment with them. We'll talk to their loved ones, but I won't work with them again for a while because I don't want them to become dependent on this. And I think I said to you, well, then go to somebody else. You can't really control that. And you said, that's right, but I can control it from my end as far as my participation in it. And I thought that was really a wonderful point that you were making on that about people becoming reliant on psychics, really, and mediums.
yeah, thanks for that validation. I feel like that's part of my contract with the other side. And speaking of your contract with the other side, which is, doing as much teaching as you possibly can, your show, people can just call in and get real help. Could you leave us with how people could work with you, and then any final thought that you want to add?
Yeah, and I tell people, if you want to learn how to do woo woo and your finances are strapped, just listen to my show because you'll hear a caller say, "Can you scan this? Can you scan my dog? Whatever." And then see what my answer is. And the more you do that, you're going to start getting the same answer. And then you hear me validate what you're getting. But Ask Julie Ryan is the show. We're on all the podcast networks. We release 4 shows a week, and one is a call-in show, and the other 3 are interviews with fascinating people in this space, like you. And then we're on YouTube. We've got 5 channels on YouTube: English, Spanish, Portuguese, German, and French with this information. So everything's at askjulieryan.com. All the socials are Ask Julie Ryan. Everything's in Ask Julie Ryan. I do private appointments with people. I do priority appointments with people where you can get in within a few days. I have 5 graduates working with me now that you can usually get in to see them. It's all online, either on Zoom or on a phone call, and you can usually get in within a couple of days to see them, certainly within a week. And they're a lot less expensive than I am, but that's just because I only have so much time with doing all this. And you know that drill. But my show's free. You can call
Yeah.
into my show every Thursday night, come in on the Zoom, or it's Julie Ryan, askjulieryanshow.com, or come in on the YouTube live stream and you can put a question in the chat. We take questions from both. And then I do a live on the fourth Tuesday of every month. And it's kind of like a slumber party, like a pajama party. You can come in your jammies and it's a couple of hours and it's a blast. And I give away prizes and people, call in and they want me to scan them or they want to talk to a dead loved one or they want to do a past life thing or they want to talk to their pet. It's all the buffet of psychicness.
It's a delicious buffet. So, Julie Ryan, thank you.
Thank you. What an honor to be with you and sending everybody love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah!
Visit our website, carefreemedium.com, or find us on social media at Carefree Medium. Thanks for supporting Carefree and Conscious.